Secret fires forged his soul, allies bound by passion. He had entered the realm as a disgraced former holy son. He emerged as a master of fate, with the treasures of the ancients in his hand, and the most powerful women of the generation at his side. The mature bonds he had formed, forged in the heat of the fire sea, and the shared chi of the toxic forest were the foundation of a new power. He stepped into the air, the black python he had tamed rising to meet him. As he flew toward the horizon, the world realized that the legend of Xiaoyang was no longer just a story of revenge. It was the beginning of a magnificent, brutal era. He had outgrown the shackles of his youth, and the path toward the true heights of immortality was finally open. He was no longer a disciple or a son. He was a king in the making, and the world was his to command. The saintesses followed him, their silhouettes merging with his against the setting sun, a promise that the next stage of his journey would be one of even greater power, deeper intimacy, and unyielding dominance. He looked back at the fading rift one last time, a cold smile on his face. The northern border was now his playground, and he was ready to show the world the true meaning of being reborn. The air on the journey to the ruins of the ancient alchemy sect was thick with more than just spiritual energy. It was heavy with a silent, suffocating obsession that trailed Xiaoyang like a shadow. He moved through the jagged, lightning-scarred peaks with the measured, unhurried pace of a man who already owned the horizon. Behind him, Li Xingyao, the sword idiot, watched the rhythmic motion of his shoulders with a gaze so focused it felt like a physical touch. "You didn't use the Zixiao blade against the guardians of the outer gate," she said, her voice a low, raspy velvet that seemed to vibrate in the cool mountain air. She stepped closer, her athletic frame moving with a predator's grace, her hand resting on the hilt of her own sword. "Why, Xiaoyang? Are they not worthy of seeing the light of an immortal sword?" Xiaoyang didn't stop, his black robes fluttering in the wind. "A butcher doesn't use a dragon-slaying saber to kill a pig, Xingyao. Waste is a sin in cultivation." She laughed, a sharp, melodic sound, and pulled herself level with him. The heat from her body, tempered by years of harsh training, radiated through her thin travel silks, brushing against his arm. "Then show me what you use for a dragon," she whispered, her eyes burning with a mature, unstated challenge. The tension between them was not merely about the sword. It was about the raw, magnetic power Xiaoyang projected a dark sun that Li Xingyao found herself unable to resist. When they breached the heart of the ruins, the atmosphere turned from heated to hostile. The air inside the jade-walled halls was a humid soup of 5,000-year-old medicinal dross and the dangerous hum of fire arrays. A group of disciples from the Supreme Tao sect, led by the arrogant young Master Zhao, blocked the path to the central alchemy chamber. Zhao, dressed in shimmering gold silks that hugged his pampered frame, looked at Xiaoyang with a sneer of pure entitlement. "A rogue and a sword-crazy woman?" Zhao mocked, his fingers crackling with lightning. "This inheritance belongs to true scions, not scavengers. Leave the girl, hand over your storage ring, and perhaps I'll let you crawl away with your life." Xiaoyang finally looked at him, his eyes twin voids of purple intent. "You speak too much for a man who is about to lose his world." The fight was a blur of calculated violence. Zhao lunged, but Xiaoyang moved with a speed that defied the eye, catching the young master's wrist in a grip that sounded like dry wood snapping. As Zhao gasped in agony, Xiaoyang leaned in, his voice a chilling rasp against the other man's ear. "You wanted the inheritance? The only thing you'll inherit is the dust of this floor." With a single surge of qi, Xiaoyang unleashed a wave of force that didn't just defeat them. It shattered their golden defensive robes, leaving the geniuses shivering and half-naked in the freezing mist of the ruins. It was a total, visceral humiliation. Xiaoyang stepped past them and sat atop the massive, bronze, heaven-defying cauldron, the light of the Nirvana rebirth pill reflecting in his cold eyes. Li Xingyao watched him from the shadows, her breath hitching at the sight of his absolute, ruthless dominance. The scene then shifted to the sprawling base of Yuanwu Mountain, the site of the Jiazi competition. Thousands of spirit boats hovered in the clouds like a fleet of celestial lanterns, and the banners of the great sects snapped in the high-altitude wind. In the Qingyang sword sect's encampment, the air was toxic with desperation. Jiang Ting sat in her private pavilion, her fingers trembling as she applied her makeup. "He's here, father," she whispered to Jiang Qitian, who paced like a caged beast. I saw him at the gates. He didn't even look at me. Jiang Chitian grabbed her shoulder, his grip painfully tight through her silken robes. Then you must make him look, Tinger. Remind him of the 10 years he spent as your shadow. Remind him of the love he once bore for you. If we do not bring him back, the Qingyang name will be a footnote in history. Jiang Ting looked at her reflection. She had intentionally loosened the collar of her white and green robes, revealing the graceful, pale curve of her neck and the rise of her chest. She truly believed that her beauty was a weapon that could still penetrate Xiao Yang's armor. He will come back, she lied to herself. He always comes back to me. But the Yuanwu Tower shattered her delusions. The first test of the competition was an immortal relic that measured the weight of a person's soul. One by one, the geniuses were spat out at the 20th or 30th floor. Qin Fei, pushing his broken body to the brink of a second death with forbidden medicines, managed to reach the 35th floor. He emerged, gasping for air, looking up at the crowd with a sneer of triumph. Then Xiao Yang walked into the tower. For a heartbeat, the mountain went silent. Then, the tower didn't just light up, it roared. A pillar of purple light exploded from the base and shot toward the heavens, passing the 10th, 30th, and 50th floors in a blur of motion. The spectators stood in a trance as the light hit the 99th floor, triggering the celestial chime, a sound that resonated through the souls of everyone on the mountain, a sound that hadn't been heard for a millennium. Xiao Yang stood at the pinnacle, his figure projected against the clouds for all to see. He looked down at the world not as a competitor, but as a god who had found the entire world wanting. Qin Fei, standing at the base, looked up and screamed in a voice cracked with madness. "It's a trick! He's using a demonic artifact!" Xiao Yang's voice boomed down, amplified by the tower itself. "Qin Fei! Even a dog knows when to stop barking when it sees its master. Why don't you?" In the nights between the duels, the atmosphere in Xiao Yang's private pavilion was a suffocating mist of romantic tension and mature desire. Hua Mengli, the saintess of Xiaoyao, and Ning Shu, the holy maiden of heavenly medicine, had joined Li Xingyao in his camp. They were a guard of incomparable beauty, 3 of the most powerful women in the northern border, all bound to one man by a fascination they could no longer name. One evening, Ning Shu brought a tray of spirit tea to Xiao Yang's chamber. The moonlight filtered through the silk screens, casting long shadows across the floor. She wore her pristine white robes, but in the dim light, they appeared almost translucent, clinging to the soft curves of her frame. "Your qi is turbulent, Xiao Yang," she murmured, her voice a gentle caress. She sat beside him, so close that her silken skirt draped over his knee. She reached out, her cool, slender fingers pressing against the pulse at his neck. "Let me help you harmonize your inner sea. The battle tomorrow will be taxing." Xiao Yang caught her wrist, his grip firm. He pulled her closer until their faces were mere inches apart, the scent of wild jasmine and ozone filling the space between them. "Are you truly healing me, holy maiden? Or are you seeking to be burned by the fire of my intent?" Ning Shu's breath hitched, her eyes darkening with a mature, desperate hunger that she had suppressed for years. "Perhaps both," she whispered, her gaze dropping to his lips. The ecky subtext of the moment was a living thing, the shared heat of their cultivation, the raw, physical proximity of a woman who had spent her life on a pedestal and a man who had the power to pull her down. Before the moment could break, Li Xingyao stepped into the room, her eyes flashing with a sharp, possessive jealousy. The air was electric, with a competitive, mature passion that defined the new harem forming around the unfettered sword god. The final act of the arc was the great banquet of reconciliation. Jiang Qitian, driven to the edge of ruin, stood before the assembled lords of the northern border. "Today, we celebrate the return of our prodigal son," he shouted, his voice a booming lie. "To seal this bond and ensure the peace of our lands, I officially announce the betrothal of Xiao Yang and my daughter, Jiang Ting." The hall erupted in whispers. Jiang Ting stood up, her robes fluttering as she walked toward Xiao Yang, her eyes misty with a carefully rehearsed longing. She looked like a celestial maiden descending to earth, her hand outstretched. "Senior brother, let's go home. Everything can be like it was before. I have missed you." Xiao Yang stood, the sound of his chair scraping against the stone like a blade on a whetstone. He didn't take her hand. He took the cup of spirit wine from the table and poured it slowly, deliberately, onto the floor at her feet. "Home?" he asked, his voice a chilling rasp that silenced the entire hall. "You mean the sect that watched me bleed for 10 years and called it duty? You mean the woman who stood by as my brother's poison needle sought my heart?" He stepped into her personal space, his aura so cold her teeth began to chatter. "Jiang Ting, look at me. In your eyes, I see only the greed of your father. In my eyes, you see a man who would rather burn the world to ash than touch your hand again." He pulled the ancient, yellowed marriage contract from his belt, the last tether to his childhood. "You want a union?" He ignited the paper with a spark of purple chi. The flames licked his fingers, but he didn't flinch. He let the burning fragments fall onto Jiang Ting's expensive silk skirt. "There is your union. Ashes and wind." Jiang Ting collapsed into a heap, her face a mask of ghostly white as the guests began to mock her openly. Jiang Qitian roared, "You ungrateful beast! I gave you everything." Xiao Yang turned to the sectmaster, the Zixuan immortal sword humming on his back. "You gave me a grave, Jiang Qitian. I'm just here to make sure you're the one who ends up in it." As the Jiazi competition drew to a close, Xiao Yang stood on the highest peak of Yuanwu Mountain. The three saintesses stood behind him, Li Xingyao with her hand on her blade, Ning Shu with her eyes full of smoldering fire, and Hoa Mengli with her fan folded like a dagger. They weren't just followers. They were his companions in the dark, their fates irrevocably tied to his rising sun.